Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to everybody to the expose and introduction to the new Black and Green Ambassadors project. The whole purpose of the project is to ensure that the environmental movement is inclusive and representative of all communities, regardless of ethnicity. It's also a relaunch of the original project. And as such, we will be welcoming and introducing the new Black and Green Ambassadors. They'll be telling us all about their efforts to empower new diverse community leaders and the ongoing work of engaging people with the environmental message and the struggle for social justice. Of course, as we introduce the new ambassadors, we'll be paying tribute to and saying goodbye to the old ones as we enter a new phase and seek to set up the efforts of those who came before. So, this special online event has been set up in order to reach out to the wider global community in an interactive arena. We'll be able to hear a diverse range of viewpoints and get as many people involved as possible. We'll be hearing about the groundwork which has already been laid, and assess the challenges which lie ahead of us as we seek to involve those communities who have been neglected and ignored in the whole environmental debate. So, without any further ado, I would like to introduce our first contributor, Mohammed Sadiq, Chair of the Bristol Green Capital Partnership, to set the scene for this evening's event.
Sandra, thank you very much indeed. The world's becoming highly dependent on biodiversity, and within that, the environment and the economy are intrinsically linked. A recent Barclays report highlighted that the economic benefits are worth $125 trillion worldwide. And declining biodiversity is costing us $20 trillion a year. And crucially, moving forward, this is now recognized. And there'll be an estimated $3.2 trillion invested every year to help address the declining biodiversity. So why is this relevant? Well, here in the UK, some of you may be already aware that the government has highlighted that the country would like to be net zero by 2050. And they use a term that's now commonly used, which is we want to see a green recovery. Or, in fact, some are going as far as saying that the UK will lead on the green industrial revolution. And that will include activities around energy efficiency, electrical vehicle charging infrastructure, nature restoration, building resilience and flood defences, and reshaping our cities through renewable energy, recycling, hydrogen being used, and over £1 billion a year being spent making our schools much more sustainable. I could go on. But the reality of the situation is that despite all this additional investment, we still find that the environment sector is amongst the least diverse of all occupations in the UK. 3.1% of environmental professions identify as minorities compared to 19.9% of all occupations. 9% of UK students in higher education can go into the environmental profession, which is compared to 23% of other UK students. And if you look at specific organisations that are supposed to be spearheading the environmental charge, the Environment Agency and Natural England, they have respectively 3.8% and 1.8% diversity within their organisations. So here we have an amazing opportunity to help improve the environment, and one which is going to be investing heavily to help do that. And through that, we'll be therefore creating jobs. And yet, the statistics as they stand suggest that the BAME community is unlikely to benefit from this economic surge in the green sector. That is why this particular initiative, the Black and Green Project, is so important. It is doing something that has not been done before at any scale in helping to bring together and championing the green sector and reminding folk within our communities that we too can benefit from this revolution that we're going to see taking place over the next few years. We're privileged to have our esteemed speaker from Boston in the States, from Tufts University, Julian, who is going to talk to us around the international aspects associated with sustainability. Julian himself is passionate about sustainability and has talked extensively and written extensively on social justice and environmental sustainability issues. I understand, Julian, you also have
and thank you, Bristol, for inviting me. Let me just get my, yeah, I'm just trying to do that. Here we go. Okay, so what I want to talk to you today about is my idea of just sustainability. In the last 20 years, there's been a discourse, a narrative, talk about sustainability. And most of that talk has been what I call environmental sustainability. There's been an equity deficit in much of the discourse around sustainability. And my idea of just sustainability is trying to right that discourse. We don't want to see a green world, we want to see a just and sustainable world. But before I actually start that, I'd like to do a land recognition. I always do that now. I'm presenting to you from the land of the Wampanoag people and the Massachusetts people here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, their past, their present and their futures, and commit to a principle of respect and care as part of this meeting. We have to remember, environmental justice didn't start with the environmental movement. Environmental injustice started with the settler colonization of the United States. And it was about 400 years ago in September that the Mayflower landed on the shores of Massachusetts. So I'd like you to bear that in mind as I continue my talk. So what is just sustainability? Again, I mentioned to you earlier that this equity deficit really concerned a group of us when we were thinking about this book. And now, for many of you who see books on sustainability, there's always one chapter on equity. This book, every chapter was about equity. Every chapter was identifying equity deficits and the ways that we can fill those. It focused on environmental quality and human equality. We were thinking, why is it that groups to do with social justice like Amnesty International or housing groups aren't being involved with groups like Friends of the Earth and Greenpeace? Why is there not a conversation between environmental quality advocates and human equality? And I'd go as far as to say the reason we've failed in environmental quality protection and in social justice is because we haven't seen the intersectionalities between the two. So sustainability isn't about just green issues. Green's important, but it's not simply about green issues. It's about questions of social needs, welfare, and economic opportunity, as Mohammed highlighted. So what do I define just sustainability as? The need to ensure a better quality of life for all, now and into the future, in a just and equitable manner, while living within the limits of supporting ecosystems. And there are 4 conditions. We have to commit, you in Bristol, we globally have to commit to improving our residents' quality of life and well-being. We have to meet the needs of both the present and future generations. Much sustainability literature is about future generations. How do we preserve and protect the integrity of ecosystems for future generations? We need intergenerational equity, but we also need intra-generational equity. We need social justice now. We need to also think about justice and equity more broadly. There's a new concept, relatively new concept, called recognition. Black Lives Matter, Me Too. These are, I call them, precursors to justice. If we do not recognize the right of people to be and to thrive, then how can we do justice by them? How can they be included in what we call justice? Now, all of these conditions then, of course, must be done while living within ecosystem limits. There is no planet B, there's no waste pipe and resource pipe coming from another planet. This is where we are, and we've got to make a better job of getting on with each other and the planet. Now, I'm in urban planning, I'm a professor of urban planning, and these three overarching thoughts on urban planning, I think, apply to sustainability planning more generally. First, I want to think about urban planning as managing our coexistence in shared space. Think about that in Bristol. Do you manage coexistence in shared space? Do you celebrate coexistence in shared space? That's where we should be. And whether we're talking about environmental issues, transport, housing, or other conflicts, this notion of managing coexistence in shared space takes place in what I call cities of difference, where otherness is becoming increasingly common. We are in increasingly diverse and different places. How do we manage our coexistence in shared space across difference? Second, I want to think about the relationship between belonging and becoming. In Bristol, you've got all these great ideas, one city, all these great ideas about what you can become. Smart, sharing, resilient, sustainable. All cities are looking at this. But what we're forgetting often is the belonging aspect. Who gets to belong? Through recognition, reconciliation, difference, diversity, and inclusion. I want us to think about both dreaming about future cities, the becoming, but I also want us to think about who gets to belong in our cities, because increasingly we are denying belonging. And then I think we need to think about not human scale planning, but I want you to put a letter E on the human. I want humane scaled planning. Where is the empathetic city, the empathic city, the city that embeds dignity into its policy and planning processes? So I want to give you three quick examples, bring that theoretical aspect down to the ground. And I'm going to talk first about Minneapolis, fascinating city. How does one of the most green, liberal cities in the United States end up as the epicenter of our current introspection over structural racism? I then want to talk a little bit about spatial justice. How does where we live affect us? And then I want to talk about the importance of leadership and vision. And I think you have both in Bristol. And I want to talk about the possibility next year of Mayor Michelle Wu, who would be the first woman and the first woman of color mayor for Boston. So let me talk about Minneapolis. Don't you know it's a green utopia? For 10 years on the trot, the Trust for Public Land in the US has given it the nation's top park system. It's one of the best cities in the US for exercise. It's got the third most bike commuters. It's affordable. It's great. That's if you're white. But also, Minneapolis has got the racial inequality stigma of being the worst in the nation. The black-white income gap, the wage gap, is huge, the biggest in the nation. The wealth gap, home ownership, the wealth that travels through generations, is the biggest in the nation as well. The school achievement gap, what's called the K through 12 achievement gap, or more correctly, opportunity gap, is huge for African American and Native American Minnesotans and Minneapolis residents. So when I think about just sustainability, if I go back one slide, if we were to just look at the surface, Minneapolis is green, but it's not just. There isn't a just sustainability in Minneapolis. How do we move towards that? And moreover, why is Minneapolis so problematic? And I found a quote from Kirsten Delegard, who's a historian and the founder of Mapping Prejudice, which is a project in Minneapolis. She said all that civic rhetoric about Minneapolis being a model metropolis at the cutting edge of great urban planning obscures darker truths about the city. Now, urban planning is different in the US, and I'm going to take you through it. But you will be able to see in Bristol parallels between certain neighborhoods and certain issues that are happening in other cities around the world, perhaps even Minneapolis. So in the 18th century, Minneapolis had a small but very integrated African American population. But then in the early 1900s, Americans discovered racialized covenants. This property, this house shall not be rent or otherwise sold to anybody other than the Caucasian race, no Mongoloid, Negroid, Turkish, horrifically racist language. These racialized covenants existed by law until the 60s, but of course they still exist unofficially. Added to that, in the United States, zoning, where people can live, was racialized until the Supreme Court struck it down in 1917. But then cities got another idea. They said, well, okay, racialized zoning is not legal, so let's do single family zoning, which means a big house on a big lot, which means a lot of money, which means low income and minority people can't afford it. So it was racism by the back door. Then you had a phenomenon in the 40s and 50s called redlining, 30s, 40s and 50s, called redlining, where banks, the government, put red lines around certain districts that were heavily immigrant, minority, low income, and you couldn't get loans. Covenants, single family zoning, redlining equals racial segregation. There's only one country in the world that did it better than the US, and that was South Africa under apartheid. So what now? Well, there's an acknowledgement by the Director of Long Range Planning that this urban planning, this land use, has contributed to extreme segregation and to some of the racialized problems. And let's not forget as well, 93% of Minneapolis police officers don't reside in the city of Minneapolis. They come in. I want to make a bigger point. If your organization doesn't look like the people it is serving, is it legitimate? Is it effective? Is it trusted? I put it another way in terms of urban planning. I call urban planning the spatial toolkit for articulating, implementing, and maintaining white supremacy. But the good news is we can do something about it. So what is Minneapolis doing? They've got a very ambitious plan called Minneapolis 2040. They were the first city in the US in 2018 to abolish single family zoning. And now they allow what we call duplexes and triplexes, double and triple homes on single family zoning. There's inclusionary zoning, which means more than 10% of units in new buildings have to be affordable to people on low incomes. But I want to guide you to the eliminate disparities clause in the Minneapolis 2040 plan. See all communities fully thrive regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, country of origin, religion, zip code, having eliminated deep-rooted disparities in wealth, opportunity, housing, safety and health. Really, really important that that is carried out. So here you have a progressive city, a liberal city, a green city, but deep social injustice. They desperately need and are working towards a more just form of sustainability through the Minneapolis 2040 plan. The second piece I wanted to talk to you a little bit about was this idea of spatial justice. David Lammy said, just as social justice requires that life chances are not distributed along class lines, spatial justice, justice through space, requires that they are not distributed geographically. Now, there are very few cities in the world now that have walls like Jerusalem, Nicosia, Belfast used to, but here in the US, we have a railway line, a freeway or motorway, a river going through the city, and on one side they live, and on the other side you live, and now your zip code is a better predictor of your health than the genetic code. So your postcode in the US is better predictor of health than the genetic code. And here we have the Del Mar Divide in St. Louis. And you can see there, African Americans at one side of the Del Mar Boulevard, and at the other side, it's largely white. And this divide literally determines how long you will live, your job opportunities. How do we break down spatial injustices? Now, we have the most powerful tool that geography has given to the world since the map, which is Geographic Information Systems, GIS. GIS essentially can map spatial injustices. It's an essential tool for us in policy and planning to look at how good we are at impacting real people's lives. But we're also really good at spatial injustice. We design spaces that exclude people. We do the rich doors, the poor doors. We do the defensive architecture that stops kids skateboarding. We put armrests on benches to stop homeless people. This is indefensible. It is hostile and defensive architecture. And I'd like to see urban designers, architects, people think about refusing to implement some of these atrocities. Bottom left corner is very interesting. That's a bridge in Seattle. There was a lot of homeless people sleeping under there. So the city council thought, we know what we can do. Let's put bike racks there. Nobody's going to complain because everybody wants bike racks, sustainability. There was an outcry by the bike community in Seattle because they said, whoa, look, Seattle, we have a problem with homelessness. It needs policy solutions. It needs resources. Don't use sustainability infrastructure to try and do your dirty work. I was really pleased that the cycling community came out and said that. Now, one of the solutions to spatial injustice that is being pushed in the US is the idea of complete streets, livable streets. And I know that in the UK, similar, if different named projects are underway. And here's what these are. They're about decentering the automobile, making streets for people. But one of the problems that we have begun to identify with the idea of complete streets, I mean, everybody wants a complete street, everybody wants walkability, everybody wants cyclability, everybody wants good public transit. But one of the problems is that the neighborhoods that tend to get these green treatments, these sustainability treatments, often end up being gentrified. House prices go up, and it's been shown statistically, house prices go up, rents go up, and people get moved out of their neighborhoods. And we're calling this in the US greenlining as opposed to redlining. Redlining was a specifically racist way of breaking down neighborhoods. Greenlining isn't racist, it's about sustainability. But again, who can afford to live in these neighborhoods? I want to see everybody in these neighborhoods. And I just want to give you one thought. The key urban sustainability measurable is walkability. Absolutely, without a doubt. A walkable neighborhood says many things about the neighborhood. It says about safety, it says about all kinds of things. And there's an app for measuring walkability. It's called WalkScore. And in the US, that app is owned by a massive estate agency. Let's just think about that. We have commodified and compromised sustainability to the extent that walkability, the most key feature, key metric of urban sustainability, is now commodified. And your house price is linked to the walkability of your neighborhood. That's a problem. The final thing that I wanted to talk about was the importance of leadership and vision. And I want to particularly highlight Michelle Wu, daughter of immigrants, a person who is rapidly climbing the political ladder in the US. She's allied very much with AOC, Ayanna Pressley, the very progressive wing of the Democratic Party, who, if the present incumbent gets out of the House, will be in there on January the 20th. But I really want to say here is hope in the United States. Young, woman of color leadership is on the rise. And this is, I can't tell you how important it is, especially for cities like Boston, which have literally had white male mayors of either Italian American or Irish American extraction. And to have the potential of a new mayor is brilliant. And I want to tell you why. Have you ever heard of a mayor a potential mayor with a food justice agenda, but not just a food justice agenda. This is not food action plan. She says food justice means racial justice, demanding a clear-eyed understanding of how white supremacy has shaped our food systems. That's coming from a potential leader. If she gets in, I think the chances are great, but if she gets in, we will be able to rewrite food justice and many other forms of justice, employment justice, because this food justice plan doesn't just talk about food and access to food and food deserts. It talks about worker rights. It talks about immigrants getting access to city-owned lots. It's a very far-reaching plan. The next thing that I want to highlight is, and links to Mohammed's point about green recovery, she has a Green New Deal for Boston and is pushing the idea of just recovery. And she talks about the need to close the racial wealth gap and dismantle structural racism. This new narrative could rewrite the narrative of Boston. Boston will be always cheers and the Red Sox, but with somebody like Michelle Wu, she will, I think, rewrite the narrative of a city that is an immigrant city that is doing so well on the world stage because of the enterprise and character of its immigrants. So over to you, Bristol. Let me just summarize. You need to be thinking about coexistence in shared space. You need to think about belonging. Who gets to belong? Because ultimately, who gets to belong will decide what our cities can become. You need to think about intercultural, culturally competent planning and policy making, practicing humane scaled and human scaled urban planning. And you need to understand how white supremacy has shaped our cities and how we can go about dismantling it. As I said, urban planning in the US is different, but you have some very similar issues in Bristol. And you need to understand how white supremacy has shaped Bristol and how you can go about dismantling it. Do your organizations look like the communities they serve? This is really important, really, really important. I see so many environmental food organizations that just don't look like and are doing missionary work in low-income communities. It doesn't sit well and it doesn't work. And above all, I'll leave you with my absolute baseline. Social justice never simply happens. It has never simply dropped on people's laps. We've had to fight for social justice, and it never happens in planning processes and outcomes. Show me a policy that was designed around environmental, economic, or technical efficiency that has had as a side effect social justice or equity. They don't exist. We must be intentional, implicit, and social justice must be front and center in our work. And I am so pleased to see that this program, this great program, is carrying on, and I'm going to continue to monitor it over the coming years. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you to Julian Agyeman and for joining us, even with the 5-hour difference. There's plenty. Thank you, Julian. A lot to think about there and a lot to chew over as well. It's important to reflect on both the international and the national context and movement within which the ambassadors are working within. We are part of something much bigger and on a global scale. We also invited a few speakers to share some of their reflections on how our mission in Bristol relates to their work and the global movement for environmental and climate justice. But before that, just remember, we are on social media, so do make some noise, #Bristol, #BlackGreen, and we'd like to introduce the first video for the evening to hear more.
The 21st century is a multicultural world, aware of the paramount importance of global interconnectedness and of addressing diversity and equality. Policy commitment and policy at the top is really important, but the ultimate success of all policy depends on local implementation. The expression of commitment to diversity and equality in policy terms is people-centered environmental policy.
Grassroots projects like Black and Green Ambassadors is really important to tackle environmental issues, global issues, social injustices, because they are from the community. They know the community. And more than ever, they care about the community. So I have personally seen the influence and the benefit that people have, especially the future generations, when they are told things by people they know and trust.
We have to engage our communities, find common ground, and work together. Local grassroots projects like the Black and Green Ambassadors know what their communities need and how to engage them. And if we're to take the radical steps which the climate emergency demands, our movements must be inclusive and representative.
L'Europe a besoin de villes en première ligne, de villes qui inventent ce nouveau modèle, ce nouveau contrat social, écologique et citoyen. Le partage d'expériences entre nos villes sur ces sujets est absolument essentiel.
In order to solve the issues of today and move forward, to face and put an end to humanity's two biggest threats. On one hand, climate change, and on the other, the most cruel of all sources of inequality and poverty, discrimination.
If we really want to achieve change, then activism has to become more inclusive, and learning that you are going to address this topic and that you are actually doing something about it is really warming my heart right now. And I can only encourage you to keep going, keep spreading awareness, keep up just good work. And I just want to thank you for your commitment.
I'm really giving this message to say how much I support and endorse the Black and Green Ambassadors programme. It's fantastic news that it's going on to have a second round. I see your role as also bridging past political divides, and I look forward to very much working with you to deliver for our communities and bring our communities on the journey with us.
So important that we all get behind environmental campaigning. I think often people think of environmental changes that we need to make to solve climate change as making sacrifices. Actually, when I learned that housing contributes 14% of our carbon emissions each year, I realised that that means that if we solve that, we get warmer houses, we get houses that are warm and affordable to heat, we get homes that are better to live in for our health and for our well-being, as well as saving the planet.
It's amazing to participate in this event, especially because I am the representative of my country, my people, and many marginalized communities. The environment is in danger right now. Please help us and support these initiatives like B&G Ambassadors. We can get it.
Hi, I'm Sandrine and I'm the founder of the Refugee Food Festival in Bordeaux. I wish the best for the Bristol Black and Green Ambassador. Best wishes from Bordeaux.
My name is Moses Kakanu. I work at Del Sofala. We are looking at institutional stoves. We are looking at solar lanterns. We are looking at solar lighting. We are looking at solar-powered irrigation systems. Wish you well from Del Sofala. Thank you.
We must act now and put an end to all forms of discrimination and seriously accelerate climate action and work together on these global challenges which need collective responses, because solidarity without borders is a moral imperative.
For every Bristolian, right across the city, we need to get behind the campaign for environmental justice, because that also brings about social justice and greater equality for us all.
We are in a climate and ecological emergency. An immediate radical action on a global scale is needed if we're to avoid the worst of this crisis. This year has made clearer than ever that if we're to overcome the global challenges we face, we need vibrant and resilient local communities.
Let's use our voices to make sure that we set an example that fulfills our role of leadership.
Très heureuse de vous dire aujourd'hui mon soutien total au maire de Bristol, Marvin Rees, à toute son équipe, à votre territoire que je sais engagé sur les sujets écologiques et sociaux.
I'm so proud to support the Black and Green Ambassadors programme, and I'm excited to see the radical, bold and inclusive action that their programme brings to Bristol.
I fully endorse the Black and Green Ambassadors and their efforts in Bristol, and I hope you do also. Rastafari.
All the best for the launch and for the project, and I really look forward to working with you all. Peace.
Thanks to all of our contributors there who contributed to the video, and apologies if you were unable to add subtitles due to the time constraints, but we will ensure these are added soon and that these will be available on the website. I'd like to reintroduce Mohammed Sadiq, the chair of Bristol's Green Capital Partnership, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the programme for the city and how that will work out for us. Hi, hi, Mohammed.
Sandra, thank you again. Well, first of all, can I just thank Julian for such a thought-provoking presentation. And so sadly, many of the challenges that you've highlighted are also relevant to us folk here in Bristol. And so whilst we are hundreds of miles apart, it's rather ironic that those challenges are mirrored almost exactly. And, you know, you mentioned the spatial injustice. Well, you know, we have parts of Bristol where we have youngsters who go off university, whereas literally 2 miles down the road, you look at the same statistic and only a fraction go to university. And that's just one example. I can give many regarding exposure to environmental impacts such as poorer air quality, whether it's health, employment, that the list goes on. So thank you for sharing that. That was hugely insightful, and I'm sure we can learn and share knowledge from each other. And a huge thank you to the Green Capital team and Ujima Radio for producing such an amazing video that captures the project at its heart. I just wanted to bring that international perspective down to some of the things that we are doing here in Bristol. And it was a few years ago that the United Nations highlighted that the world just had 12 years to avoid a catastrophic climate breakdown. 12 years. That's really not a long time. And the leadership that Bristol has shown has been quite exemplary. It was the Green Party that put forward a motion that wanted to see much more ambitious targets around the climate. And all the parties came together and agreed to that. And we came up with a climate emergency. Since then, Bristol has come back with an ecological emergency. And both these two initiatives have spurred on many within the UK to deliver exactly the same. And that is true leadership in that it's demonstrated how working together we can deliver much more. And also by sharing knowledge, we can deliver significantly greater benefits to the environment at a national level. This is really an incredible moment for us because I think we have now, for the first time, UK PLC saying it wants to see a green recovery plan for the sector They've identified 10 steps to this green recovery. And I'll just highlight a few aspects that have been included as part of that will resonate with what we just heard in the video and also what Julian has highlighted. The first is to make sure that the funding that will be released is done so in a fair manner. And I think it's fair to say that there are many, possibly on this Zoom call, who will argue that that hasn't been the case in the past. It's also looking at a net zero workforce plan, making sure that our communities are all equipped to benefit from the impending growth in the economy in this sector. But the one that is perhaps the most important and resonates so much with what Julian has highlighted is to do this transition in a just manner. And again, we perhaps not being great at that. So one hopes that with the leadership that the city has shown, the amazing work that many groups are involved in, including UGIMA and the Green Capital Partnership, along with the business community, stepping up to the plate, not only in terms of helping to support us becoming a much more sustainable city, but also doing it in a manner that is just and equal, and recognizing that perhaps historically we've not done that. So we have an opportunity to dictate the future, and the future can be green and it can be equal. And I think Bristol is ideally positioned to show leadership in this area and has started doing that. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Mohammed Sadiq, the chair of Bristol Green Capital Partnership. And we now will go and introduce our second video of the evening. And we will be looking at some of the local projects and initiatives, the showcase what they do in Bristol and how their work contributes to the green and fair future we all want to see. Some of the people who have been on the journey for the Black and Green Ambassadors programme. So over to the video.
I set up Black to Nature 5 years ago, and it's an organisation that's all about campaigning for diversity in the environmental movement and the nature sector, as well as running nature camps for children from VME or visible minority ethnic backgrounds. I think that this work is so important to make sure that everyone has a strong relationship with nature for the sake of their mental and physical health, as well as making sure that the environmental movement is representing and helping everyone.
One of Rising Arts Agency's main aims is to support young artists who are engaged in social impact. So these young artists predominantly come from communities that are underrepresented in the creative and cultural sector too. We're also really interested in developing ways to work collaboratively and radical ways to take the lead. One of our focuses is on developing sustainable ways to grow, not only in our practice, but as ourselves. So authenticity is really key to us and what we do.
A big theme of the type of art and the type of activities that we choose to curate and also create ourselves, it has always been a reconnection with the natural world and with the land, and valuing all the wholesomeness and the goodness of that reconnection and the reconnection with ancestral values that ties in there. The film is exploring themes around seed saving and seed sharing and ancestral practices that were interfered with in the colonial period and by corporate meddling.
The Diva Fields is all-inclusive, and we want to provide a haven where all people feel accepted and grounded and share in the joy of a meaningful relationship with the earth.
We are a 2-acre biodynamic market garden situated 20 minutes south of Bristol. Our Diva Fields provide a gardener's sanctuary for vulnerable adults and refugees. We function on a no-dig principle to preserve the integrity of the soil. We ensure that we plant a lot of different varieties of crops, and especially heritage varieties, to keep the seed bank alive, and also to ensure that we provide a variety of produce for the public to eat.
We're so inspired and excited to start the network because we have a wealth of talent already, from green journalists, educators, mentors, nature connectors, experts in cultural knowledge and skill. And we want to celebrate this by bringing together environmentalists of colour to share, learn, support each other and inspire each other.
Tribe of Doris is a place of many cultures and one race, where humans of all colours and creeds can be together and sow the seeds.
Hi, my name's Dee Bamford, and over 30 years I've organised 2 events, one called Tribe of Doris, brings people together through culture, drum, dance, song and ceremony. Imela, which works with young people and families, taking them to the country and giving often people the first experience they've had of really being out in the wilds of nature. I was born in the wilds of nature and I really appreciate it. And I've now believed that only by understanding each other through the cultures that we come from and having a real appreciation and an understanding of nature will we survive.
91 Ways to Build a Global City. The 91 symbolises the 91 language communities of Bristol. And what we do is to bring those communities together. We want to build a more sustainable, fairer, unified city. We bring the 91 language communities together using the catalyst of food. Food is very important. It's important to people. It's about nourishment. It's about life. But it's also about sustainability. What I want to see is diversity at the heart of the green conversation.
We are an umbrella organisation for communities wanting to deliver energy projects in their communities, from solar panels, wind turbines to home energy projects and tackling fuel poverty. It's fantastic that Black and Green Ambassadors is back up and running. We have a new cohort of energy champions training, and we look forward to working with more energy champions and Black and Green Ambassadors.
One of the last things that we did before lockdown was host the Arts Council and the Carnival Network South, bringing together a number of carnivals across the country to come to a conference which was called Towards a Greener Carnival. We've already had a conversation around how we can use sustainable materials in our costume making. We're also working with Minirig to develop vehicles and with a sound system that are off the grid, so not using harmful material or harmful fuels.
Nature means many different things to different people. NICE, Nature Youth Connection and Education, was set up and continues to work to bring the natural environment alive for young people in their communities who do not always get this opportunity. We're part of a growing movement, however, an environmental and social movement. And with limited resources, we'll continue this work and champion that of others in Bristol and beyond. The land is for all, not just the few.
Thanks again to all the contributors there. I think the one that sticks in my mind is 99 and all those different types of food. It's time to introduce some of the people from the programme team to share with the audience the journey of the Black and Green Ambassadors programme, and importantly to highlight those individuals and organisations who have supported along the way. Firstly, we hear from Roger Griffith, founder of Creative Connects and co-founder of the Black and Green Ambassadors programme. Secondly, Liz Testani, Chief Operating Officer at Bristol Green Capital Partnership. And finally, Sandra Gordon, Director at Ujima, And within this segment, we also hear from two of our many supporters of the Black and Green Ambassadors programme in a video message, and we'll introduce the new brand for the Black and Green Ambassadors logo. Over to you, Roger.
Thank you, Sandra, and a great welcome to this prestigious day. The day, how do we get here, I suppose, is my key point of this presentation. And I'm going to walk you through how exactly we got from there today. It really is a prestigious day with all these great commitments internationally and regionally, but most importantly, locally. And that's come from the heart of Bristol. On my left there, you'll see a former director there, Paul Aslan, who's shared with me this journey. And in many respects was the vision. He said back in 2011, we've got to go green, Raj. We've got to go green. We've got to see a good future that's coming up with the Green Capital, European Capital. And I was like, come on, man. We've got housing issues, policing issues, then as now, employment, all kinds of stuff, criminal justice. You know, have we got time for those things? Yeah, because they're a part of everything that we're going to do. And I'm glad to say that Paul's delivering Paul's vision has been something I've been proud to deliver, and its many iterations. And certainly from the conversations from Julian and especially Mohammed earlier, nothing simply happens. That's exactly right. Paul got in touch with people at UWE, Bev Green, I do believe, from them. We had Green Citizen Journalism as our first project. I wrote a paper for Darren Hall of the Green Party in 2011 to kickstart some of these issues that were occurring. When we looked locally, when I thought more, I reflected on what Paul had said. I looked at great campaigners from the Bristol bus boycotts, Roy Hackett, who talked to me about his farming roots. Many of my own mother, still grows, still got a patch. She still grows her tomatoes in her garden in London, from rural backgrounds. Peaches Golden, was then Lord Lieutenant High Sheriff, now had also taught me about communities that stretched back to those on the plantation. St. Mark's Road, that hotbed of plant-based diets. We had all of these things around us. The more I thought and reflected on what was there, and of course, from going back from our many communities, in my own family as well, Ital foods, Rastafarian foods there, and I thought, I don't want to hear any more now, such as we've seen this, that we're not part of the environment. As Julian said, this not only directly affects us from our communities I visited within New Orleans as well from Katrina, in terms of affected by the environment, through Africa, through the Caribbean and droughts, and through Asia as well. We are also part of all those recycling, making our clothes and food as well. So we had some green journalists with Universities Bristol in 2012. It then kicked on another step. So what our model is to create leadership. It's to put the infrastructure in and step back and get new leaders forward. And Julian Davis picked up the baton and then took it further. He's the one who came up with the green and black slogan. Shh, it's now black and green, of course. No, don't tell the lawyers, we're keeping them at bay. And we had a program of work. And again, nothing comes. Simply happens. We were rejected from the bids, but we're like water, fresh water that runs through a leaky roof of Bristol. And we found a way of delivering that. And we backed Julian in what he was doing. And he went from the outsider to being a part of that, a big part of it. In fact, he's one of the key campaigners through things that occurred. And one of the leaders that were within Bristol, with the support of fantastic teams. You can see Jazz was in there, and those Jazz and Zakia were around in the studio, and I knew we needed perhaps a different face. It was too male. We needed some new voices to come through, and so they stepped forward into the breach and became our first black and green ambassadors. And we had good support across the city consistently. We built partnerships from the roots up. Some of those were difficult conversations. Andrew Garrard there, our now backer, was the chair back then. And I said, look, we're always left out this conversation. And legacy that didn't want to stop there either was part of that. He's backed us consistently with his support and leadership over those years. Jasmine and Zakia came into operation. Again, we were delighted to work in partnership. Gary Top from way back when in Townsend, and then Rich Pankos from Cabot, Lizzie now, as you're going to hear from, and creating different projects out into the community, taking people out. Eat Your Greens project, Photo Voice, a number of different things. Even got to introduce Bernie Sanders as well, thanks to Festival Ideas, as well as making programs, working with Up Our Street, local community projects, using media, using leadership in terms of reverse mentoring, working with people like Rich Pankos and Joy Carrier there in terms of, you need to be more diverse, you need to bring in different views and feels, and Bristol really took to it. The next iteration now for myself, you saw Nisha earlier, is to continue that alongside the Black and Green ambassadors. We'll be building international partnerships and networks. And again, that was somebody who approached us, was an intern at UE, still is, a master's student there, and now is co-leading with me on the Black Seeds Network. And we're going to take that into our next iteration. Anybody wants to join us from tomorrow, because there are people out there who are always saying we want a part of this. Can't be an ambassador, but we still want a voice. We still want, as you heard from Maya earlier on. My final, next to last slide is the role of those partnerships, and thanking people as well as our Ujima team back at base, keeping that going and nurturing the whole projects from that, including Cap Wall and Rich from Bristol Partners and Hayley Shaw. Lots of different people have occurred. We, as Paul says, they're not backing us. We're not backing them. They're backing us. We've gone across the party political lines. We don't pick sides. We've worked with Marvin. We've worked with George. Both have been great backers in what we've delivering. Got great, fantastic relationships, and continue to develop both those relationships in and out of office. Been vital in terms of having their support again. And finally, a big thank you to everybody who's contributed. As said, it doesn't just occur. You need those local grassroots voices. When we asked Roy, he said he's always talked about the Bristol Busboy Racism. Nobody asked him about his connections to planet Earth. Nobody asked our local communities when we sent people out into one of the most polluted corridors, which was the M32 corridor with our green journalists, and then putting Jazz and Zakia into action, Jules before that, and now our brand new ambassadors, as I'm delighted to see through our national lottery, and again, a lot of lobbying, and thank people like Tim Tarrant who have been part of that, as well as fantastic team and partnerships. Partnerships is the key, local grassroots engagement, and there are plenty of new voices to grow and nurture who are going to be Black Seeds and Black and Green ambassadors. I want to thank you. I'm still going to be around as part of the project. I'm really just excited to be a part of that. Thank you.
And we're so glad you are, Roger. Thank you so much. A brief introduction for those calling from outside the city. Bristol Green Capital Partnership is a network of over 1,000 member businesses and organisations working together to make Bristol a more sustainable city with a high quality of life for all. And we feel privileged to continue our long-standing collaboration with Ujima Radio and to support the Black and Green ambassadors. Achieving the amazing vision that's been explored tonight for a Bristol that does benefit us all, from access to interesting work, to understanding each other better, breathing cleaner air, feeling more connected and living more years of all our lives in good health, requires an approach planned by and involving everyone along the way. The Black and Green ambassadors is an important part of this puzzle, but as we've seen as well, it's by no means the whole puzzle, and luckily it's not alone. It sits alongside many initiatives addressing equality gaps, finding solutions to climate, ecological and social challenges, and helping our city become anti-racist for the benefit of all. And it's a very hopeful sign that Bristol have got behind this project in such a big way. The programme has received support loudly and clearly from the pilot project up until today, and we want to thank you all, from partnership members, businesses, individuals and community groups, and in particular to our steering group, Nisha Bevan, Roger Griffiths, Manu Manganidze, our founding ambassadors Jazz and Zakia, and the continued support of both the University of Bristol and the Cabot Institute for the Environment and the UE Bristol, with Hayley Shaw and Jamie Darwin representing on the steering group. We'd also like to thank the supporting members of Bristol Green Capital Partnership, whose ongoing contributions enable us to continue our work to support action and collaboration across the city. From the pilot, we knew this programme had huge potential for impact, but to really achieve that, it needed to be scaled up and fully resourced. And thanks to the National Lottery Community Fund and all the support we have received, we're now here today relaunching this programme on a much bigger scale. So we'd like to thank, in addition to the National Lottery, Bristol City Council, First Base, the Society of Merchant Venturers, Bristol Energy Cooperative and Low Carbon Gordano via their Megawatt Grant Scheme. These new relationships have been based on an open and willing exchange of learning and ideas. We know that all supporting organisations have been reflecting on their role and ability to act to further the vision and mission of the Ambassadors Programme, and we look forward to their contribution and collaboration moving forwards too. We've also been overwhelmed by the generosity of individuals who want to see this fly. We'd particularly like to thank Andrew Garrard, who has offered his support for the 3-year programme, individuals offering sponsorship for year 1 of the programme, Bristol Friends of the Earth Supporters Group and Ian McGuffick, and all those who have offered in-kind support and donated financially through the Just Giving campaign, which we were delighted to see spring up after announcing the relaunch. And thank you in particular to the audience tonight. You've added £200 in just the last hour, so thank you so much for that. Finally, while they have the full support from the project team, including Vicky Woolley from Bristol Green Capital Partnership and Colton Romain from Ujima Radio, it is an incredibly brave thing to take on a role like this, and the Black and Green Ambassadors, both graduated and current, are really due this level of incredible support from the city. 2 of the supporters have shared a message tonight, which will be coming up next. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tim Temple from the National Lottery Community Fund. Before joining the fund, I spent years working in the environmental sector, so I've seen firsthand all of the brilliant work that it achieves. And I know that the sector will be much the stronger for the Black and Green Ambassadors programme, which is a good example of diverse local partners coming together to address the complex, intractable issues that face us all. At the National Lottery Community Fund, we want addressing the impacts of climate change to be a golden thread that underpins all of our funding. We want to ensure that equality, diversity and inclusion is at the heart of our funding approach. And we understand that we need to support our current systems so that they can adapt to address the climate emergency. We know that in order to be able to do this, we must first examine the point at which environmental response, social justice and anti-racism intersect, forming new partnerships and working together as one. The Black and Green Ambassadors programme is a brilliant example of a project doing all 3 of these things, and the National Lottery Community Fund is proud to provide the funding that enables some of that work.
Wow, so Bristol Green Capital Partnership now has 1,000 members, and we are about to start the construction of a huge wind turbine, community-owned wind turbine in Lawrence Weston. And of course today we see the launch of a new era of the Green and Black initiative. All 3 of those give me significant satisfaction because they can all 3 be traced directly back to our year as European Green Capital. On a more personal note, I'm also rather pleased to report to you that I was part of the very first Green and Black broadcast by Ujima Radio in 2015. Bristol does not, of course, have the monopoly on the green and black vision, and by rather a neat coincidence, I spent last week on a series of marathon Zoom calls, 30 hours in total, with the African Academy of Sciences. We were charged with the responsibility of finding young African scientists to work explicitly on the UN Sustainable Development Goals, green and black. And we had some £9 million to spend. It seems to me entirely appropriate this community action is led by 3 young black people in Bristol. It's clear that all of us have to participate in this movement. And they represent one part of society, but all parts of society must contribute. So these three ambassadors enter this year with a huge burden on their shoulders. And I'm sure you, like I, look forward very much to seeing what they achieve and wish them all the very best of luck. Thank you for listening.
In our city. We've seen in 2020 that climate and social injustice is a global people pandemic, and it has forced us to look internally and individually on the impacts we're having and to find our own solutions. The world was forced to stop. This allowed the birds and nature to feel free to move around safely. It gave us the opportunity to breathe unpolluted air and reconnect with the environment, friends, family, and ourselves. The accountability of climate and social injustice is not just the responsibility of global leaders, or countries, or cities, but we all have an individual role to make that change towards creating a fairer, greener world to live in. I see this project as a seed that we will nurture and help to flourish into national ambassadors, global ambassadors for the Black and Green agenda, fighting those inequalities on a global scale together. The vision of the Black and Green Ambassadors Programme is of a world in which all people are equally leading, delivering and benefiting from environmentally and socially just communities. The programme exists to connect, empower and celebrate diverse leadership and community action on environmental issues in Bristol and beyond. Challenging perceptions, creating new opportunities and working towards ensuring the environmental movement is inclusive and representative of all communities. The programme commits to investing in leaders in Bristol who will work with and between diverse communities, businesses, other organisations and individuals to explore, amplify and enable solutions leading to an environmentally and socially just future for all. This year we're evolving from the Green and Black project to the Black and Green Ambassadors Programme, where we are no longer at the back, but at the forefront of the conversations around the issues that impact our people and planet. It was important to find a brand and logo that embodies the ethos and the values of the programme. I'd like to thank Derek Edwards from Patwa Designs for helping us on this journey. We are about people and the environment in which we all live. Our logo represents the heart of our people and the leaf of the environment. Our people are many shades and tones. I see me, I see my friends, I see my family, I see my colleagues, I see us. The leaf is a reflection of the environment, the earth, the land in which we all live. This programme symbolises moving forward and all in the same direction. It is a strong call to action for all of us to make the changes we want to see. We need to ensure that our voices and communities are heard, as we're often missing from those tables. In the Black and Green Ambassadors Programme, we're creating that inclusive platform for emerging leaders to step forward and lead the debate. It's time, the time is now to hear our voices. The time is now to hear from Jazz and Zakia, our outgoing ambassadors, in conversations with Roy, Olivia and Asia, our new Black and Green ambassadors.
And if you've just tuned in, this is Green and Black Radio. Welcome. Here we will be questioning diversity in the green sector. That's what we're fighting to.
to the Black and Green Show. My name is Roy Kareem.
My name is Asia Yosef.
And I'm Olivia Sweeney.
Us three are the new Black and Green Ambassadors for Bristol. If you haven't heard of us before, the Black and Green Ambassador Programme was set up to bring some diversity to conversations around sustainability and the environment, and we are very proud and very excited to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight and for everyone's support. We're so excited to see this new phase of the project start. I feel like it's been a long time coming, and I just feel so proud of where we've come from and where we are today. And where we came from, you know, we wanted to create a network. We wanted to create a family and a space where people can be seen and disrupt and challenge the status quo. And it took time, as things do, as great things do. They take time. It's not a quick fix, you know, it's a long game. And you need to take time to let things grow in the way that they should and not be forced. And we wanted to pave the way so that Black people and brown people felt that they could take up the space they needed in the environmental movement. And I think we did that through many, many conversations. And I'm so proud of how far we've come. And so I think this is the perfect time to get to know the new ambassadors joining the Black and Green family. So I want to introduce all the new ambassadors to everyone. And I'm just going to jump straight in there and ask my first question to you all. So my first question to you all, starting with Asia, is why did you put yourself forward to become a Black and Green ambassador?
Thank you, Jazz, and hi everyone. I'm really excited to join this project. I came from Sudan in 2010 to Bristol, and I came from background which everyone in my neighborhood, we treat him, it's like one of our family. So when I came here, I feel a bit isolated, and I immediately start to find people from my community. And after that, I said, why I can make it wider and to meet people from other communities. And I start to be volunteer with an organization working with refugees and asylum seekers and people from the different backgrounds. And I changed my career completely. I studied geology and I changed it to community work. So yeah, so that's mean a lot for me and something I'm really passionate about it, to work with the community. During my work, I realized that whenever we held event regarding to environment or sustainability, there is not a lot of people, engaged with that event, and I start to think about that. Why people they not engage with this kind of events? And definitely there is a gap. I know a lot of people, they coming from background, they practicing a lot of sustainable practices in their home, in their country. But when they came here, it's not like big issue for them. And they did realize that it's something impact all of us. It's not like just few people. And from that, I come across Black and Green Ambassador Project, and I feel that is the right platform for me to make impact within this community, and I'm really excited about that. Thank you. Yeah, that's me.
What about yourself, Roy?
Why? I had to have quite a long think about this one. And I went back all the way 40 years ago. My dad set up a mental health service specifically for those from ethnic minorities in and around North London, which is where I'm from originally. So I felt I grew up in and around these kind of conversations about the links between people and culture and nature and well-being and how they sort of flow into and out of each other. And when I first moved to Bristol, it was 2015, which has been mentioned. It was a moment when the city was just becoming the European Green Capital. And pretty soon after that, I remember hearing about the Black and Green Ambassador Program. And I thought, I've got to get involved in that somehow. something that deals with this intersection of sustainability, culture, areas in my mind that I'd always had interlinked, but I'd never seen anything out there that was sort of dealing with it. And then maybe even more importantly, I hadn't seen many people in the sustainability or the environmental sector that looked like me, or that looked like my mates that I grew up with in London. So that there was something about seeing myself reflected. And then that sort of final bit, why right now? I think some of it was pragmatic. I knew the program was sort of renewing itself, but then some of it's just down to this very particular and strange year that we've just had of 2020, the pandemic, Black Lives Matter, Trump, Brexit. And it was just so totally apparent that if I didn't step up myself to try and address that lack of representation that I just talked about, then nothing was ever going to really change. So yeah, I felt there was an onus on myself to step up, and that's me.
And I'll come in and answer that question last, I think. So during my interview for the Black and Green Ambassadorship, I think I said the quote that we've all probably heard in the ether quite a lot recently: if not now, when? If not me, who? And I think that speaks very well to kind of my motivation for taking on this ambassadorship. I'm a new Bristolian. I moved to Bristol the day of the first lockdown in March. So community is always something that's really important, but it's particularly important in times like this. And because of the time that I moved to Bristol, it is and was really hard to find my community and that sense of support and understanding. So very selfishly, part of the reason for me applying to this role and being an ambassador is the chance for me to find and connect with my community through a subject that I'm really passionate about, and hopefully do a little bit of good along the way. Sustainability has always been something that I've been passionate about. I remember learning the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle at school, and ever since then it's kind of been my thing. That's the reason I chose to study chemical engineering at university, and it's what has been kind of a guiding principle in my career path so far. And as I've grown up, I have become increasingly aware of the social justice and behaviour change angle that is intrinsic in the environmental movement, but you're not necessarily taught and exposed to that from the beginning. So Black and Green came along as I was finding my voice. So I'm hoping to learn and grow with the programme. And talking about race is hard in certain settings. So being able to find my voice within an understanding and supportive network is a rare privilege. And it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up.
Cool. So I think, that's a good introduction of why you actually wanted to join the project. But after a while, I'm sure you guys looked around and thought, okay, this is something for me. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. So tell me a little bit of what excited you about the project, because Jazz and I came in blank. We had no clue what we were going to do. We kind of figured it out as we went along, but you guys have kind of seen what we've done and you see what you can do. Like at this point, the things that you can do with the project. So tell me, let's start with you, Asya. Tell us a little bit about what excites you about the project, about what you think you might be able to do with it. Unmute yourself for us, please. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, as I said, as I mentioned earlier, the combination between environment and community work, that's which is something I'm really passionate about it. And I believe that everyone he can contribute to this. It doesn't matter if you have a degree or not. If every little experience, it can contribute to this program. So I heard a lot of experience from people. They just came to the UK, and they have been practicing sustainability in their home, eating from their farm, okay, using their reusable bag, and stuff, very small stuff, but sometimes they feel shy to share their heritage and their experiences with others. And or maybe they didn't have a chance to share that with the wider community. So I think that I'm going to focus on this to get those people with the bottom voice heard and to share their experience, and yeah, just to believe in themselves. So yeah, that's what I'm excited about. That's me. Thank you.
And towards the start of the ambassadorship, as Zakia said, you know, there was a lot of things ahead of us, and we didn't have anything to sort of map the way. We had to map the way ourselves. But we had so many ideas, and I wanted to ask you, Roy, what do you think you will be focusing on as an ambassador? What's bubbling away in your mind for projects and ideas? What are you going to focus on?
So many things, Jazz. So many things are bubbling away. I've got a really big interest in like people's connection to the outdoors and to nature, kind of more generally, how it affects their mental health and well-being. And I think it's, you know, mental health issues in communities of color is sort of such an under-recognized issue, and there's a lot of stigma and around it. So that kind of area is really interesting, and sort of specifically, and it kind of sounds super geeky, but parks as a sort of public forum for people being able to connect with nature, like who uses them, who looks after them. And it feels like so relevant for this time right now during lockdown and social distancing. But you know, how much of a refuge have these public areas been? And then I think the other piece that I'd really like to get into, sort of surfacing some of these unheard stories around nature connection. So be that the Bangladeshi descendant who loves fishing around Bristol because, you know, catching fish is such a big part of Bengali culture, or the Jamaican pigeon keeper, or, you know, people who, you know, those stories, and, you know, people don't associate them with being sort of, you know, deeply connected with nature, but they're just not in the way that's normally framed as sort of, this is what natural history is. So yeah, some of those kind of unusual stories is something I'm really looking forward to exploring, I think.
And I'm just gonna switch the question up just a little bit. So Olivia, if you could tell us a little bit about some of, just as Roy was saying, kind of old practices or kind of cultures, indigenous people that you're interested in their work or their ways of life. I think one of the things with this project, we've said, you guys have said it already amazingly, and you barely started, is that we recognize that we have to be looking outside of the global north, outside of Europe, and we look towards the cultures that we come from, or our families come from, or even places we might have visited. And so I'm interested in, from, you know, your perspective, what are some of the places in the world or the cultures or you know, traditional practices that have essentially put you here with us today?
So my dad is from the Caribbean, so so Dominica, so that culture and those practices carry across to me. So I remember vividly being disgusted when he first sucked the marrow out of a bone at the dinner table. But that is minimizing food waste to the most extreme, and that's something that is just commonplace. So now I appreciate much more of what he was trying to teach me than I did at the time when I was sat at the dinner table. So it's things like that, and my grannies. I think we've always had, not just from my dad's side, but within my family as a total, this sense of waste not, want not. And I think growing up so much more connected to the environment. I've grown up in a city. My dad and my granny grew up much more connected to nature immediately. And I think that appreciation of what's beyond your front door, you know, the wider world. So my connection with Dominica through family, but my connection with Korea because my best friend lives out there, or my connection with South America because that's how I first kind of got interested in social justice and climate justice, because of the really horrifying stories you hear about around land rights and kind of the total denial of African descendants within South America as a whole. So all of those different connections allow me to appreciate the world as a whole. So I'm obviously going to want to look after it, and I'm obviously going to want to make it better, because it's not just about me in my place, it's about me over there, or my friend over there, or my family over there, or a total stranger who just deserves the best that they can. So yeah, that's how I connect to everything, and how also you learn from all that as well.
And I'm just gonna ask Asia that question as well. Are there any, because you told us a little bit about your background and culture, but are there any particular people in, whether in the environmental movement or in your personal life, that you look up to? And I think, again, this is an important point to bring up in this setting, because we're so used to the people on the forefront of environmental work not looking like us or being very famous, when, as we heard from Olivia, it's her dad. You know, we heard from Roy earlier, his dad as well. So from your perspective, who are the people you look up to?
Yeah, I will be very honest on this, and I would say my my grandma. She always cook for us, fresh cooking from the scratch, and even my mom after that, my aunts, they all follow this process, and it is very common in Sudan. It is very common, people cooking from scratch. I think in many different countries as well. So yeah, and we used to play in my childhood. I mean, in my childhood, we used to play with the doll made from used cloth. We sewing from the used cloth, and we filling with the cotton. And whenever we had our haircut, we use that hair to sewing that hair in this doll. And it's a doll with the natural hair as well. So we enjoyed it. We enjoyed it, do it from the scratch, and then play with it, washing it every week, and take care of her. So I think that's and also it's a rule from my grandma. Everyone in our family, in bigger family, use reusable bag, which is made from the fabric, and we sewing at in our homes. It is very common in Sudan, but we never use a plastic bag. It's like it's something is not acceptable in our family. So I feel my grandma did incredible work for us and for all the family.
We're all here trying to raise the voices of the few in the environmental movement. And as Asia said, we all have our own stories, we all have our own things to bring to the table to that movement. But specifically in Bristol, this question goes to you, Olivia. What are your thoughts on the visibility of people of colour in Bristol, or even in the wider environmental community?
So I think my perception of the visibility of people of colour within Bristol has been slightly warped, because for as long as I've been here, I've been part of Black and Green. So I've been really lucky to be exposed to the environmental movement through this network of diverse and talented voices. And in an ideal world, that is how it would always be. But I think more generally, there is definitely a lack of visibility for Black and brown people within the environmental movement. In the UK, at least, this kind of new wave of sustainability or greenness has taken a very middle class guise, and in many ways it's seen as a privilege to have that addition in your life that's sustainable, and that separates it from real life in a lot of ways, and it also creates a movement that looks and sounds in a very singular way. I think quite often white voices are given better media coverage as well. I'm talking about Bristol specifically, but wider as well. May you agree or disagree with what Greta does, everyone knows her. But I wonder how many people could equally say they know people like Mary Copney, who is an activist of colour, who's been working to raise awareness around the water crisis and so much more since she was 8 years old. She's now a teenager. And she's given so little media coverage that she's not able to use the opportunities to get her voice known. And I think this also speaks back to what Roy mentioned earlier. If you're not seeing yourself in a movement, it feels like a movement doesn't belong to you. So why would you engage in it? And it's really important to break that cycle of a certain type of person being seen as green. And visibility is a big part of breaking that cycle. And I think that it's not just about visibility as well. I think Mohammed mentioned this before, there's so many other reasons why diverse voices are really important in building this great green new world that we're all aiming for, because if everyone's not part of building that in some way, we're going to end up kind of in exactly the same place that we are now, just with a few solar panels and electric vehicles, and we want something better than the present. So visibility is part of helping that. Engage with diverse voices to build, not only a green future, but a diverse and distributive and regenerative and all those other fancy terms that I could drop world that's better than this.
So Zakia and Jasmine, I would like to ask you a few questions about your journey. And yeah, I would like to know if there is any challenges face you in your journey, and if there is any lesson learned from that.
Yeah, absolutely. We faced so many challenges. I mean, along the way, we really did learn about the power of conversation and connecting in the most immediate ways as possible with people, and the power of really planting a seed in people's minds and changing perceptions by taking the time to talk to people face to face, because it's really easy to forget such a simple thing, but its power and its will always be super significant. It always will be. To be able to speak to someone to their face and to change their perception by you just being there, and engaging in conversation with that person on a level is so important. And during the pilot phase, we had hundreds of research ideas and projects that we really wanted to do, but we just didn't get time to follow through with them because we spent so much more time than we wanted to having meetings and talking to people and having face-to-face meetings and talking on the radio. And at first, for some reason, that made me feel really frustrated. I thought, we have to produce all of these projects, and I felt like there had to be something really super tangible. But towards the end of the pilot phase, looking back, I really realized that that's actually all that we needed to do. And I really appreciated how much of a strong effect that has had on people's perceptions in Bristol. So yeah, I learned to never really be afraid to speak your mind and play the long game, and to accept that, great things take time and they need to be nurtured. There's no quick fix, especially when it comes to environmental justice and social justice. You have to take time.
Great. Yeah, you did amazing job, guys, and we really appreciate that. And thank you for opening the door for us as well. Yeah, I don't know if Zakia is still with us or not.
Yeah, I'm here. I can say a few things. So if I'm to be very honest, and we have said it to you, it's one of the first things we said to you. I think one of our biggest challenges was the correspondences. Jazz has mentioned it. It was keeping up with everyone. Emails haunted us. We'd get so many, and as Jazz said, we'd feel like if we spent 2 hours doing the emails, we weren't actually doing the project. So I think for us, it was learning that, because a part of the Black and Green Project, a big part of it is about leadership. So it's about development as ourselves, to kind of keep a project like this going. And so I think that was really hard for me. It was to be able to manage the project again, because Jazz and I were in charge, because it was so new. We did a lot of things off of our own doing. And so it was hard for me. It was that leadership bit. But I think the project, the managers, the coordinators of the project, once we said it, we got our kind of training here. We got help as we could. So I think what was hard is that Jazz and I thought we were stuck with a lot of it, but we actually learned that as leaders, one of the things you do is when you've had enough, or when you can't do anything else, and you stop. So we could focus on the few projects that we did do and do them well, as opposed to when we had a whole bunch of projects and feeling bad that we weren't doing them and we weren't, doing them fully enough. And we just were able to focus on smaller ones. And I think we're happy.
Well, I think all three of us would like to say thank you to Jazz and Zakia for taking the time to introduce us to what Black and Green is, for sharing your advice and your knowledge, supporting us up until this point, and I'm sure you will be supporting us as we continue. I know I'll definitely be harassing you via WhatsApp or whatever to get your insight.
Please do.
So I and Roy and Asia look forward to continuing to work with you and learn from you. Without your hard work, as Asia said, we wouldn't be here today, and we hope to meet the high standards that you've set. We'd also like to take this opportunity to reach out to everyone watching and say get in touch with us. You are our community, and we are here to magnify what you're already doing and connect you with other people out there. So it's not just the three of us. We are ambassadors, and it's bigger than us and bigger than Bristol. So what's truly unique about the Black and Green ambassadorship is its use of arts and culture to aid communication around the environmental movement. With that in mind, as newly official 1 minute in Black and Green ambassadors, we would like to invite Mo, a powerful keynote speaker, philosopher and poet. Mo's purpose is to support people to fulfill their potential in life. Through his inspirational words, spoken word performances, and activism, he brings a unique perspective that challenges the status quo. So without further ado, I would like to pass the mic to philosopher Mo.
Hello, everyone. And before I begin, I just want to say very much excited to see all the amazing work that all the ambassadors come up with. So yeah, and Roy, Olivia, Sia, looking forward to that. So today I will be sharing with you a poem that I specifically wrote for you guys, and I call it A Place I Once Called Earth. And yeah, with no further ado, I will start here. So, a place I once called Earth. Let me take you on a journey. So just sit back, relax, and try to visualize what you're hearing. In fact, let me sit up back straight and project my voice clearly. I want you to hear what I'm saying and see what I'm painting. 1 million BC, a world without Homo sapiens. Step out the time machine. Can you see the ice age? Ice cap still engaged. Sea levels 125 meters below what it is today. Mid-ocean ridge, the longest mountain range. Step on the peak and see what your eyes can gauge. Things might not be the same. What you see might seem strange. UK sharing borders with Europe? Brexit wasn't an option back in those days. A time when mammoths roamed the earth, saber-tooths and terror birds, all once lived in a place I call Earth. Africa, a place I still call home. Listen to their myths, taboos, stories, and proverbs, a place where nature is truly appreciated and understood. Take a look at their indigenous communities. Tongas of Zambia have no need for environmental policies. Sustainability is part of their philosophy. Organic farming, crop rotation, and selective harvesting, renewable energy is what they're harnessing. Sacredness of their water supply enforced and ensured by traditional authorities. It was of Nigeria, a distant cousin. Ecological ethics aligned with their morals and efforts, humans, animals, and the earth, all simultaneously and spiritually connected. Question for the West is, can you practice what you're preaching? Harmonious coexistence, 2 words that was once used to describe the Amazon. Now plagued with deforestation and disaster, millions of species are at risk of extinction. The Caribs tribes are no longer with us. Others are only scattered remnants of what they once were. Global warming, 2 words that now describe a place I call Earth. So, what am I trying to say? What is the moral of this poem? Well, let me give it to you straight. 4.5 billion years and only a few centuries to mess it all up. See, I believe we lost our way. Our ancestors may have not had ovens, but they knew how to use clay. They may have not had social media, but they knew how to communicate. They may have not had the latest technology, but they knew how to sustain. Now, I'm not suggesting that we go back to the Stone Age, but what I am saying is that maybe our history can remind us of what it means to be human again. And as we move towards a solution, we need to understand that this is a global problem. Diversity and inclusion is necessary for the movement towards a sustainable future. Protecting and renewing our natural environments, the green planet and the blue one. Protecting and reviving our built environments, the green spaces, food sources, and housing standards. Preventing and reducing carbon emissions as we address and no longer procrastinate on air pollution. A world where all communities are equally recognized in their efforts towards a sustainable future, as environmental justice and social reforms are two sides of the same equation. So let's get up and let's get it. It's time for a rebirth. You only get one chance in the place I call Earth. Now, that might have been the end of my poem, but it's only the beginning of what will be a long but hopefully rewarding journey. And I would like to call upon every individual in the audience to know that you are a leader in your communities, in your businesses, your household, and if nothing else is true, a leader and thus responsible for yourself. Therefore, we must be the change that we wish to see. A magical government isn't coming to fix all our problems. It starts with us. So I would like to end by saying thank you all for sharing with me your time and your attention. And as you leave here today in pursuit of your goals, may they be environmental or otherwise, I would like to remind you of the following words of Les Brown. That is, if you want something bad enough to go out and fight for it, to work day and night for it, to lose your time, your peace, and your sleep for it, and if all of your dream and scheme is about it, and life seems useless and worthless without it, and if you gladly sweat for it and fret for it and plan for it, and lose all your terror of the opposition for it, and if you simply go after that thing that you want with all of your capacity, strength and sagacity, faith, hope and confidence, and stern pertinacity, if neither cold nor poverty, famine nor goat, sickness nor pain of body and brain can keep you away from the thing that you want, if dogged and grim you beseech and beset it, with the help of God you will get it. Thank you very much. My name is Philosophy Mo. Hope you enjoy the rest of the event.
Oh, wonderful. I haven't stopped thinking about the marrow that was being sucked from a bone there, because I'm a little bit hungry. But some fascinating stories there from the outgoing ambassadors and the new coming ambassadors. So, but fascinating to hear the journey from Zakir and Jazz and the journey ahead for the new ambassadors. So we'll be coming to Carlton shortly. We're trying to sort some audio out, but I don't know about you, but I think I've learned quite a bit about the environment from this this conversation from Maya the bird watcher, and I've heard of her for quite some time, so it's good to see her this evening on screen, but also to find out what's happening across the sea in Boston, and all of those historical things we've heard about through Black history, about the red zones and the housing issues, and now the green zones. And I think we can certainly look at Bristol and see those challenges here right now. And it will be interesting to see how the ambassadors work through them and share that information with us. I was also interested to hear about the Black pigeon or bird watcher. I think that's quite an interesting one as well. So all of these fascinating people in and around Bristol and throughout the Southwest as well. I think it's going to be a really interesting time, and to hear some of these stories and some of the journeys that the Black and Green ambassadors will be taking. We'll also be hearing those on the one and only radio station here in Bristol, which is Ujima Radio. So we had the first show for the Black and Green ambassadors, and that was available. Well, it's available now on Listen Again on Ujima, but it was a fascinating introduction to the new ambassadors, and of course will do, and we'll be if you want to go and listen again there, you can go and listen again to the original ambassadors and the new. I think we've got Carlton back now, so let's see what Carlton's got to add to the conversation. Carlton.
Hi Sandra, sorry about that, some technical issue there. I was talking away but nobody heard me, I do apologise. I just wanted to say thanks Mo, that was fantastic and resonant poem by you. I thought it captured everything, the purpose of tonight, ongoing importance of this programme, really good. And also I felt that the ambassadors, again, all 5 of them, inspiring. It was great to listen to the old as well as the new, and I feel that we've got very good ambassadors to take that baton on and onwards. You would have heard a brief clip into the brief ambassadors radio show from Asia, Roy and Olivia. They will be producing a monthly radio show on Ujima Radio 98 FM on Thursday every month, with stimulating debates, interviews, sustainable news opportunities as well, stories and championing inclusive action as well within Bristol's diverse community. Much in the same way we hope we have achieved through our event this evening. So we'd like you to tune into that, but really importantly, because I know we're running behind time now, I'm going to quickly try to move down on this. I would also like to talk about the support that our ambassadors are basically receiving at the moment, the opportunities in kind to the ambassadors, including invitations to be part of events, initiatives and interviews, as well as offers of collaboration and for training mentorship. Really important to the guys. They said, they mentioned it's part of their development and growing, so we really do your support out there. These have already great connections being made, opportunities presented, not least the ambassadors in the last month have been joining grant panels, advisory committees, attending events, speaking at London Climate Action Week. So it's been really impressive. So I'm really pleased with all those things. But you know, for us to carry on and doing this, we need more from everybody. It's really important that we have sponsorship, and it's got us to this level. We say it'd be great. I know one of our speakers, Sandra mentioned, said about global ambassadors. We spoke about community ambassadors. We need more resources, and we need more sponsors and more people getting involved. So it would be really important. If you are interested, please get in contact with us. We are also excited about working with Creative Connects on Wednesday the 9th December, so coming up really soon. They're going to be hosting the Black and Green Next Generation workshop, an evening of discussions for positive change and action in workshops for environmentalists of colour. There's more about the link as well, so it'd be really interesting. So if you are interested, please do get involved and find out more. You can also keep up to date by following us on Twitter. That will be Twitter at Ujima, Black and Green, or Ujima Radio, and or Black and Green Capital. So please track us on that as well. Thanks again. Thanks for the support we've received from all the sponsors and supports you heard about earlier. We know we can that commitment has helped us to develop and work with 9 ambassadors over 3 years. So that's the great thing about this as well. So it's not just our 3 now. We'll have another 3 next year and another 3. So hopefully more. So we're really excited about this, and we're really excited about the possibilities of developing further initiatives and projects over those 3 years and longer, because it's not just a short-term thing. Again, if you are interested in getting involved, please drop me a line. My email is carlton@Black and Green Ambassadors, or you can contact my colleague Vicky at bristolgreencapital.org. We're always happy for a chat, and please come and check us on the link. Lastly, as Lizzie mentioned earlier, we were thrilled to see the Just Giving campaign started this year, and tonight it is increased as well from you guys as well, which is fantastic. I feel we need a massive call to action now to keep this moving. We need new voices. We need to create systematic change in Bristol, and we need to consider how people can donate and support us. So please, if you've liked and enjoyed the debate, discussions, you like what you heard, you felt that you want to know more, you want to get involved, or you just want to support us, please do so. I'm sorry it's rushed. Sorry about the technical issues, so I do apologise for that. As the ambassadors have mentioned also, we're playing the long game, not the short game. So we are looking for longer term sustainability and getting out there. Sandra, back to you. I apologise for overrunning and sorry about the technical issue. And thank you all and good night. Thank you for attending as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Colton. And thanks to all the speakers, both in person and the pre-recorded contributors. And thank you to you who've made tonight happen. Particularly to Dan and Rich, the wonderful team here at the Floating Harbour Productions, Rob Mitchell, Emma Grant and Ella Trudden for their work on the fantastic videos, and of course to the wonderful Sherry there in the corner who has been translating all the way through this. I don't know how you managed through the poetry, but fantastic, wonderful to you. And of course, thank you to the ambassadors, both outgoing and incoming. It was fantastic to hear your thoughts, as I mentioned earlier, and reflections. And we thank you all for your inspiring leadership and commitment. And Asia, Roy and Olivia and all those ambassadors who follow us all over the years. We look forward to supporting and collaborating with you. And just an ask to you who are listening, many of you will appreciate the importance of us being able to understand and learn from your experiences this evening and engagement with the programme, and to know who has joined us for tonight's event. There is a button on the screen on the right now, you might see it. Yeah, there, where you can leave us your thoughts and help us complete our equalities monitoring. It will only take a few minutes. Last thing, good night from me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and see you on the other side.